Hello and welcome back to another video in this high performance series. My name is Sarah Maud. I'm the founder of the Mind Solution International. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about mental energy. Now, if you were listening to the first video, you will have heard me talk about how in order to achieve a consistent high performance state, then we need to have the trifecta of mental, emotional, and physical energy. And where I see people really leaking energy is in their heads. So we, as an average human being, spend around about 95 to 98% of the time at the level of the unconscious mind. Now within that, we also have around about 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, of which you won't be aware of the vast majority of them. And of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, 90% are habitual. So 90% of habitual thoughts, which basically means they're pretty redundant. They're habitual, they're repetitive, they're not really of any use to us because they're not giving you any new insight. They're not giving you any new perspectives or perceptions. It's just the same merry-go of thoughts that are going round and around and around. Now, one of the big principles for high performance is self-awareness, and I spoke about this in the last video. So journaling is a wonderful way of recognizing that internal chatter, that monkey mind, those habitual thoughts. Being able to journal, you're more likely to recognize when you've just fallen into habitual thinking. And there will be times when you notice that you've just fallen into an old train of thought, an old pattern of thought, an old rabbit hole of thought, as I think of them as, then it's easier for you to then pull yourself back into the present moment. Because your mind has a self-correcting system. So when we see something, when we have an insight, when we can see that, oh, you know what, I've just done that thing that I've always done, I used to do, I've just fallen into an old thought pattern. I've fallen into an old story, I like to think of it as. Then I come back into the present moment. And it's in this present moment which is where we can access the power of the mind. We can access our innate wisdom. It's very tricky to access your innate wisdom if you're thinking at 100 miles an hour. But this is where I see people leaking mental energy, is that they are in their heads, they're overthinking, they're ruminating, they're over-analysing. And it's my take that we've been lulled innocently, but we've been lulled into thinking that if we're thinking about something, we're doing something helpful. And I'm sure that you've probably heard people say, I'm going to go away and I'm going to think about that. And I kind of want to run after them and go, no, that's the last thing that you want to do is think about something. Because all that we're really going to do is start thinking about our thinking. We might think that we're thinking about a situation, but really what's happening is that we generate a thought, and then we generate another thought to back up the first thought, and then we're off. It's like we've got a machine in our brain that's firing out these thoughts, one after the other, and we get so entangled in them. They seem so real, so believable, because these thoughts create stories. They create stories, they create perceptions. Everything that you are experiencing right now, moment to moment to moment, is internally generated, perceptual map, a perceptual model of the world that you carry around inside your neurophysiology. And that perceptual map and model was created from the moment that you came into the world. It's like an internal map of how you relate to the world, how you relate to yourself. It's that internal perceptual map and model that created that sense of who it is that you think you are. What you think is true, what you think are the beliefs. So that internally generated perceptual map of the model is guiding you when you're living from the level of the unconscious mind. But the good news is that we have this innate wisdom. This innate wisdom has infinite intelligence, this guidance system that is guiding us, that doesn't require any thinking. It's this innate wisdom that can do all the heavy lifting so that we don't tie ourselves up in our thinking. And thinking which isn't real in the first place. It just seems real because of consciousness. But thinking is just two neurons that have come together. And the more that we've revisited that thought, well then whatever fires together, it wires together. And we add meaning, we add emotion, we add drama and past events and all of this kind of internal story, we attach it into those thoughts. So those thoughts are just thoughts in the way that we can look at the weather and go, well, yeah, you know what, it's quite misty in Edinburgh today. Well, that's a thought, but I'm not really going to give it a second thought because it hasn't got my attention. It's not really relevant, but other thoughts, we can give other thoughts a lot of time and a lot of attention and a lot of focus. And the more that we do that, the more that they seem like they're real. It seems like that's the truth. But we're just living from this perceptual reality. And when we see that we've just fallen into our thinking, when we see that we've just fallen into a story that we've told ourselves, well, the mind has a self-correcting system. It can self-correct ourselves. But it's not always easy to see that. And this is why self-awareness is so crucial. And I spoke about this in my last video, that for a high-performance habit, journaling is so fundamentally important. Because if we're not aware of those thoughts, those stories that we tell ourselves, about other people, about what's possible, about the world, if we're not aware of that, then we're always going to seem like we're victims of circumstance. We're always going to be living based on these thoughts as our reality. But the truth of who we really are is before all of that thinking. But if we're not aware, if we don't have that level of self-awareness, if we don't have raised levels of consciousness, then we can only see things from our current level of thinking. It's a little bit like, imagine that you're in a glass elevator. And at that first level, all you can see is your current level of thinking. So we can't really see the bird's eye perspective. We can't see the big picture. But as you move up those levels of consciousness, well, we can start to see more. We can start to see the dots being joined. We can see the bigger landscape. So working on evolving our mind, growing our mind, developing our mind, raising our levels of self-awareness and consciousness is absolutely critical for consistent high performance. And we can recognize when we are just caught in those stories so that we are not leaking energy. And that innate wisdom that we are tapped into that can do the heavy lifting for us, well, the more that we utilize that, the more that we're going to perform at a higher level, because our insights, our direction, our answers, our solution, they're coming from this innate wisdom, they're coming from this infinite intelligence, and they're not just coming from the intellect. Because our thinking forms part of the intellect, but the intellect, it only knows about the past. It only knows what it knows. Yet our innate wisdom, that's just a whole different level. And we can see examples in history of where people have had insights through their innate wisdom. And it's my guess, in fact, it's my guarantee, that if you were to go back in your mind and you were to reflect on when you had an insight, when an idea, a bit of inspiration just dropped into your mind, that you weren't doing very much. So I was having a conversation last week with the founder of a unicorn company, and I asked him, where does he get his best ideas from? And he told me, in the shower. In the shower is his creative thinking space. And I'm like, yes, I'm in the shower with you. I mean, I'm not in the shower with him, but I'm totally with him. That's where my thinking space is, because I'm not really focused on anything. So my mind is quiet. And that's the thing about when we spend a lot of time in our mind thinking and overthinking, we get into high range beta brainwave state, which is the survival brainwave state. So it's chaos, because we're not actually meant to be thinking, we're meant to be fleeing from whatever the perceptual danger is. So when we are thinking and overthinking and ruminating, and we've got all of this energy going on up here, well, we can't absorb information. We can't see the wood for the trees, because we're just going round and round and round on a merry-go-round of thought. We can't retain information. We can't make great business decisions if we're overthinking. And our autonomic nervous system will be on high alert, because if we've triggered the survival response, our body's going to be in survival response. We cannot perform from that state. So when we are in a calmer state of mind, and the brainwave state comes down into more of an alpha beta brainwave state. So when you're in the shower, when you're in the bath, I mean, Archimedes, he discovered the principle for volume when he was just taking a soak in the tub. Now, when you're out for a walk, when you're walking the dog, maybe even when you're driving the car, when there's very little on our mind, that's when we can really access our innate wisdom. And it's that innate wisdom that is going to guide us, is going to give us the answers that we're looking for. It's not going to come from our thinking. We just think that it is. So I'd love to hear how this has landed for you, and what it is that you've really heard in what I've just shared with you. So do pop your comments into the comments box, and look forward to joining me on the next video. Bye bye for now.